Hey everyone, you're watching We Had That, and today I'm going to talk about the 1984 Wave 3 G.I. Joe Firefly action figure. I was on board right from the 1982 Real American Hero relaunch of G.I. Joe as a 3 3/4 inch figure, and I absolutely loved these toys. By the time Wave 3 came out in 1984, I was 100% into G.I. Joe. Several of my favorite figures arrived in Wave 3, including the Cobra Saboteur, codename Firefly. Firefly was one of the first action figures that I owned from the third wave, and what a great way to start. Even before buying the figure, reading the file card on the back of the package let me know that in addition to being a cool figure, he was also a cool character. Almost all of the information about this guy was either unknown or classified, which reminded me of Snake Eyes. Even Cobra Commander didn't know much about him. No one knew his name or what he looked like. No one had ever seen him sneaking in or leaving the scene of destruction. About all anyone knew was that he specialized in sabotage and demolitions. As a kid, he seemed like such a tough guy because his file card said he got paid in advance with no guarantees or refunds. I thought, man, even Cobra Commander doesn't have any control over this guy. He was easily one of the coolest looking Cobra figures to have come out at that time, and that's saying a lot because we had some good ones right off the bat. He was dressed in a gray camouflage outfit with a matching mask, dark gray boots, and gloves. Under his long sleeve shirt, he wore a turtleneck. There was also a lot of molded on gear for this guy. On his right forearm, he had a knife. There was a pistol molded onto his right leg. On his left leg was what appear to be two explosives or possibly timers for explosives. And lastly, on his torso, he had two belts, one with a series of pouches at the top and what looked like dynamite at the bottom, and the second belt had a row of hand grenades. This guy was geared up and looking awesome. By the third wave, some of the figures were beginning to come with a little bit more gear than before. Firefly was one of the figures that I thought had some seriously awesome gear. Like most G.I. Joe figures at the time, Firefly came with a gun. I'm not positive, but it looks like it's based on the Russian PP-91 with a silencer added on. He also had a backpack, which was pretty common, but Firefly had one of the coolest backpacks in the entire Real American Hero line. It was gray with a removable panel. Taking the panel off revealed a toolkit which included molded-on screwdriver, pliers, and a bomb timer. The panel itself held a molded-on socket wrench set. The outside of the backpack had several molded-on explosive devices. Wave 1 backpacks were neat, but too small and basic for my tastes. I think almost all of the Wave 2 backpacks were better than anything from Wave 1. By Wave 3, the designs continued to be solid, with one or two exceptions, but Firefly's backpack may have been the best of the bunch. Lastly, he came with a walkie-talkie that, unlike most figures, wasn't molded onto his body or his backpack. It was tiny, and I suspect that thing was one of the first pieces to get lost in the entire third wave. As an interesting side note, the G.I. Joe helmets also fit on Firefly's head. As a kid, I would occasionally put a Joe helmet on him and then make up some kind of reason for his needing it. Obviously, such an awesome character should have been used all the time in G.I. Joe stories, but Firefly wasn't in the G.I. Joe cartoon a whole lot. He was probably just too awesome for a kid's cartoon. Fortunately, he did make some quick appearances in a few episodes. He was in the opening credits of The Revenge of Cobra, but if you blinked, you might have missed that. He showed up here and there sabotaging stuff or blowing things up, but the episode that featured him the most was an episode called Ode to Cobra. Although as a whole this episode probably wasn't G.I. Joe's finest moment, it was far from being one of the worst moments in the G.I. Joe cartoon series. It started with a mummy stealing artifacts from a museum, which, as a big Scooby-Doo fan, I thought was awesome. The artwork for Firefly was great in this episode. Plus, he was out in the snow, which is a bonus for me because I like those snow adventures. It even showed him using some of the grenades that he wears on his chest. Best of all, the episode has an image of Firefly standing in the shadows that's probably my favorite image of any character from any G.I. Joe cartoon. Even though Firefly wasn't in the cartoon a lot, when he did appear, he was usually doing something cool that involved explosions or sabotage. Firefly appeared for the first time in the Marvel G.I. Joe Real American Hero comic books number 24 in June 1984, where he was hired to assassinate Cobra Commander. He and Wild Weasel ended up in the Everglades after following a tracker that had been placed on Storm Shadow's sword, but they ended up face-to-face with Zartan instead of their target. For the next several issues, Firefly trudged through the swamps having various run-ins with G.I. Joe while switching allegiances to Cobra Commander and then back to Destro before eventually heading on to the Cobra-run town of Springfield. Along the way, he and Destro tried to kill Snake Eyes, but that of course didn't work out. Basically, Firefly was featured quite a bit in the comic books for the first couple of years after the release of his action figure, but despite being referred to as a guy who got the job done, I think he pretty much failed at everything he tried to do. Of course, that was much less noticeable as a kid when his failures were spread out over years of issues that came out only once a month, but going back and reading them all on the same day, it became pretty clear. None of that affects my fondness for the character, though. I still think Firefly is great. When it comes to merchandise featuring Firefly, he was probably featured on more G.I. Joe merchandise than I can think of, but I honestly can't remember much. I know he was on a puzzle in 1985, but that really isn't my favorite image of him. I can only think of two vehicles that featured Firefly on the box art, both from Wave 4, which was the wave after Firefly came out. First, there was the Cobra Ferret ATV, which shows Firefly riding on the back behind Storm Shadow. But the main box I associate with Firefly was the Cobra Night Landing Raft. I didn't have the raft as a kid, but I think it's a great set and perfect for Firefly. The Night Landing Raft, piloted by Firefly, reminds me of one of my favorite vintage 12-inch G.I. Joe sets from the 60s, the Sabotage set. The Sabotage set came with a black raft and some of the same accessories that came with the Night Landing Raft, so I feel like this is one of several instances where the guys over at Hasbro reference something from the vintage 12-inch line in the Real American Hero line, and I think that's pretty cool. I mentioned before that Firefly was one of the first Wave 3 figures that I found in the stores. I got him before I was able to find Storm Shadow. At the time, everyone wanted Storm Shadow. As far as I could tell, Storm Shadow was the most popular character from that wave. I loved Firefly, but I fell into the Storm Shadow crowd just like most other kids I knew. Once Storm Shadow arrived at my house, Firefly took a bit of a back seat for a while. However, Firefly had longevity in my collection that few figures had. While my other figures were in the spotlight, punching, kicking, and stabbing each other, Firefly was always lurking in the shadows, setting up explosives to blow stuff up. And when one of my Joes did run into this guy, he would quickly learn that Firefly was an awesome hand-to-hand fighter as well. As a kid, I would have completely different adventures with my toys every day. But even when Storm Shadow was a favorite, it was still rare for Firefly to be killed in action. In fact, he was usually one of the last men standing when it was time for me to stop playing and eat dinner. As subsequent waves came in, Firefly continued to be one of my main Cobras for the entire time I played with G.I. Joe. I'm curious what you think of Firefly. Did you have the Firefly action figure as a kid? If so, did he explode onto the scene when you played with your G.I. Joe toys, or did he stay in the toy box most of the time? Tell me in the comments below. Also, please give this video a like and share it on social media. If you enjoy my content, it would really help me if you would subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I post new videos. And one last thing, if you're a fan of toys, you should know about Toylanta, the biggest toy show in the southeastern United States, held annually just north of Atlanta, Georgia. Visit Toylanta.com for more information. As always, thanks for watching.